I'm Gemma Atkinson.
And I'm Sanderson, the Editor-in-Chief of Women's Health.
And we've just done an episode of Just As Well with the food medic, Hazel Wallace, Dr. Hazel Wallace.
Dr. Hazel Wallace,
and it was actually Gorka who suggested we bring her on, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he said that he'd worked with her and that she was really lovely and hugely educated and a fountain of all knowledge. So we thought, why not?
Yeah. She was brilliant. She looked incredible, but I liked her approach to everything nutrition, health and wellness in terms of 80-20 method, which I know you and I are both a fan of. Just kind of movement for medicine. And she's very big on alternative medicine, whilst recognising there is a place for, you know, modern medicine that we have, but it should be at a last resort. If you can have a preventative medicine over just a curable one, which I found really, really interesting.
Yeah, because she's a medically trained doctor. She studied medicine at Cardiff, actually, near where I'm from. And she worked on the NHS wards for years. But she was so forward thinking that even in her first year of medical school, she set up the food medic, because even then she realised the power of optimal nutrition in optimizing your health, because she said that in medical school and beyond, nutrition is simply not taught to students. She said it's changed slightly now, but at the time it's simply not taught. But spurred on by her own experience of her dad having a stroke in her teens, and she did her own research and she realised there can be other contributory factors to strokes, such as high cholesterol, stress, etc. She had already started to explore the power of preventative medicine.
She was marvellous. And she was very honest about how, you know, practicing what you preach and how she keeps herself well, because she was on the front line during COVID, wasn't she? She was working on the COVID wards. So she experienced a lot, and she said there was no kind of set routine or rota then. It was just you were in while people needed you. So her sleep suffered, her diet went out the window, that she wasn't training, and she spoke about how that had an effect on her mental health as well as her physical, and the importance of getting back on track if you have a period of time where you kind of neglect yourself, because you touched upon the fact as well, didn't you, that, you know, women tend to put themselves at the bottom of the pile when it comes to priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. We discussed that. As women, we put everyone before ourselves, our mums, sisters, friends, employers, children, and we come to the bottom of that pile. And she said that to be the best version of herself, she has to put herself first. And she ended up quitting traditional medicine. She no longer works in hospitals because she realised it just was not the life that for her and the life that would make her be the best version of herself. So she's has a master's in nutrition, and she specialises in women's health, and she has a clinic, and she has her platform, The Food Medic, which is huge. She has 1.2 million followers on social who all listen to her really sensible advice, because her mantra is to be the antidote to viral misinformation. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. Much like this podcast, we would like to be the antidote to viral misinformation. So,
and we will be.
Yes, we will be.
100%.
So there's a lot of synergy between us and Hazel Wallace, and it was great to have her as a guest.
So thank you, Gorks, for the intro. Enjoy Hazel Wallace. So our next guest on Just As Well is the wonderful Dr. Hazel Wallace. Now, Dr. Hazel Wallace is a medical doctor, a nutritionist, a personal trainer, founder of the Food Medic platform, and she's also a best-selling author with a following of more than 1 million on social media. She's passionate about female health, and she advocates for increased research, as she believes our health needs are largely underserved. Her aim is to be an antidote to viral misinformation, so I'm very much looking forward to getting into this chat. Thank you for joining us, Hazel.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you've done a lot with women's health anyway, haven't you? You've featured a couple of times, and you're just a fountain of knowledge when it comes to all things we're talking about. What is it that started you on your path to becoming who you are now?
So I'll try give you the short story. I basically lost my father when I was 14 to a stroke, and that was obviously a really young age and something that essentially changed the trajectory of my life. And I think around that time, I was still thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. And that moment made me think, I want to go into medicine. I want to be a doctor and hopefully help other people avoid this situation. And even at a young age, I understood that strokes and cardiovascular disease can't just be helped by medicine, but they also can be prevented by things like our nutrition, our lifestyle, how much we move, the stress that we're under. And so I went into med school really motivated to learn all about nutrition and learned absolutely nothing about nutrition. And so I set up the Food Medic blog about 13 years ago now, aiming to share evidence-based information in a blog format on how we can live healthier lives and hopefully avoid these non-communicable diseases. So conditions that are not like infections, you don't just catch them. And so that grew over the last 13 years, grew into books and podcasts. I went back and studied my master's in nutrition because, again, I was working in the NHS and I just felt like I was never going to get that information that could really help people from a nutrition standpoint. And I was seeing people every day who were impacted by nutrition. So that's really the short story, even though it's a long story. And it's still my main passion today.
Yeah, it's interesting you say I lost my dad when I was 17.
I'm so sorry.
He died of a heart attack. And again, he was 6'2", didn't smoke, really drank, in shape, ate well. And they said it was stress. And you mentioned the word stress, that it can be a cause of, like you say, strokes and heart disease. So I understand how you felt at 14. It's not nice, and it does completely change your outlook
Completely
on life. But I love that for you, it's changed something for the better, and you now have a platform to help other people who are suffering. And if you're doing preventative ways to hopefully prevent them in the first place, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, that's it. I think now that I'm in my 30s and I can look back and not look at it in such an emotional way, I really think that while it was a really horrific thing that happened, it's something really positive has come from that. And I think that gives me like the motivation to keep doing what I do.
It's quite forward thinking then to realise the power of preventative medicine, because I have friends who are doctors. I have friends whose children are now medical students, which makes me feel very old. But preventative medicine is just not something that is practiced in the NHS, is it? It's all about solutions to people who present when they are chronically ill.
Yeah.
And for you to realise the power of nutrition and to set up the Food Medic, I believe in your first year as a medical student, shows a remarkable level of intuition and maturity.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely not the norm then. And I would be lying if I said that other medical students thought I was really cool for doing so. I got mocked for doing that and for having my little Instagram page all that time ago, because I guess I had this vision that I was going to become this doctor that was a hybrid doctor integrating nutrition and personal training. And if I'm honest, like once I started working in the NHS, I realized that was never going to happen. Your time is so short with patients, and also when you're working in a hospital setting, you're just putting out fires, you're just trying to keep people alive and trying to get them from A to B. So I think there's so much more we can do before we get to that stage. And I think for me it's never been this or that. Like medicine and surgery have a huge role in our healthcare system, but I think if we integrated more before we got to that stage, nutrition, lifestyle, stress management, we would help ease the burden on our healthcare system as well.
100%. It's like, I think a lot of the time people tend to treat a symptom rather than what's causing it. And like the first one being, if people have got a headache, I need some paracetamol, when it's kind of, have you drank enough water?
Yeah.
Did you sleep efficiently? You know, it's kind of the quick go-to, but I'm all for hopefully trying to do prevention over cure for anything. Because I think as well, I mean, the NHS is under so much stress, and if we did all this beforehand, it'll take the stress off it, wouldn't it? If it did get to that stage. And I agree with you, there is a massive place for that type of help when it's needed. But if you can prevent getting there in the first place, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, completely agree with you.
And those people who mocked you for having all that, are they now taking advice from your page?
I don't know. I don't know how they're doing. But I think I'm just really grateful that I just kept my head down and kept going. I actually had a consultant in one of my early years as a junior doctor who said, don't be afraid to be a black sheep. Don't be afraid to be different, because I feel like a lot of doctors who I met across the years really valued what I was doing and saw a place for it, but just were like, we don't really have time. We don't have the education. We haven't, been taught any of this in medical school. And I know that that's changing in a lot of medical schools where they're integrating a lot more nutrition now. But I think we've a long way to go until we get to a place where, you're getting nutrition advice from the NHS.
Hopefully, we're much more knowledgeable generally about nutrition, aren't we? When I think I've been at Women's Health for 8.5 years, 9 years in January, which is terrifying. When I think of the level of knowledge people have now,
I agree.
When I compare to what it was when you first started working with Women's Health, because I remember you coming into this building and helping us judge our nutrition awards. It must have been 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Just the general level of nutrition knowledge and health knowledge has increased to such an extent. You should think or hope that these medical students going through university now will bring that forward to their patients when they do qualify.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think people are a lot more self-aware, a lot more educated on nutrition. And that's probably partly to do with social media, because there are a lot of people who are sharing information. But I think what comes with that as well can be really dangerous, because there's a lot of misinformation, and a little bit of education around nutrition can sometimes be a bad thing because someone feels like they're an expert. So I think it's still a battle of kind of busting those myths, trying to get the kind of the voices who are loudest in the space to be expert voices, and not just people who maybe read the abstract of a study and have decided that they're going to tell everyone that X, Y, and Z is really bad for you.
Because your first book, it focused on debunking diet myths, because there's so many of them. You're told to do this and then do that, and it's not kind of like a one shoe fits all with a lot of foods. What is the most persistent myth that you encounter today in 2025?
I still think that a lot of the kind of core myths are still alive. So if we think about one of the main ones I remember covering in that book was carbs make me fat, or carbs cause you to weight gain. And low carb diets were so popular about 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think they are still popular now, but for different reasons. So people are no longer really focusing on maybe weight loss, but they're really focused on glucose spikes or longevity. So we've shifted from a weight focused narrative to now like hyper wellness hacks, biohacking, longevity focus. And I now work exclusively with women in my nutrition clinic, and a lot of them come to me and they may not have admitted to themselves that they're afraid of carbohydrates in their diet, but they will have tiny, tiny amounts in it. And these will be girls who are trying to run marathons or, just active women. And we need carbohydrates in our diet. They're not the devil. And yes, we need to have an awareness of things like how much refined carbohydrates we have in our diet and how our energy feels and cravings and things like that. But I still think there's a lot of demonization around big food groups like that.
With carbs, people's mind immediately go to bread, biscuits, and that's where the demonization of carbs comes in, because there are healthy carbs and healthy way to fuel your training, for instance.
Yeah.
So do you want to take us through that then? And what's a healthy carb to take on board to fuel, say Gemma's doing a morning workout, so she wants to cycle her carb intake, so she would eat carbs the night before. What would be the best way for her to go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all know that you can get carbs from breads, but you get carbs from so many other foods like potatoes, sweet potatoes, your whole grain rices, your brown rices, your quinoa, your pulses, even like your pastas. And I think while it feels like a really old school advice, often for more the whole grain and the brown versions of carbs is really helpful for a couple of reasons. So it's generally has more fiber in there, so it's slower to digest, and fiber is really beneficial for your gut bacteria, but also it can help with things like cholesterol levels and steady energy levels. But for other reasons, like when we're talking about glucose spikes, and this is something that is so popular right now, it's talked about all over social media. And I think one thing to really mention is when your body has a glucose spike because you've eaten a carb, that's a normal physiological response. It means that you're alive. So that's a good thing. If we're having lots and lots of spikes, or they're really big over an extended period of time, yes, that can increase the risk of certain health conditions. So we want to avoid that. But micromanaging small glucose spikes in healthy individuals could cause more harm than good, because you could become really obsessed over food. But how can we kind of steady those levels, or how can we bring down that spike? If we're having carbohydrates, we want to go for our high fiber sources, and we want to pair them with healthy fats and protein. And that's just going to help you have a more balanced meal, but also your body's going to respond in a better way.
Yeah, it's like, because I love oats. I love it. I always get organic oats, but I always put my protein powder in it. And like you say, I'll put some, some Brazil nuts in there, some good fatty nuts and chia seeds. And I don't just have porridge on its own. I always combine it. And I find, as if I used to have it on its own, I get like a slump after. But if I combine it with the other foods, I don't have a slump. I have energy. And like you say, I can then go and have a big session. So it is the whole demonizing of, I mean, do you remember the trend that went round that you shouldn't eat carbs after 2:00?
Yeah.
And it's like it's going to affect you differently after 2 than before 2. And but for years and years, people like, it's gone 2:00, no more carbs for the rest of the day. And then the whole Towie thing was the no carbs before March.
Yeah.
It was just everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think in a way, some people still have that narrative in their head that they should avoid carbohydrates, but there's nothing inherently wrong with them. It's just about with any food choices, it's having that awareness of there are certain foods that are going to benefit you in other ways. And so, if you were to just eat high fat foods, that's not going to help either. So I think extreme approaches to nutrition just never work.
And it's mentally boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you want to enjoy food. You want it to be a social event with your family, with your friends, and taste it and enjoy it, not be counting what's in it and when you can have it. That, for me, I just hate that. And the thought of my kids, like my daughter especially, one day doing that petrifies me.
It is big though, isn't it? Tracking your macros is a big thing in wellness. And it's such a lot of effort. And as you say, it just takes the joy out of eating.
Yeah.
It's everything within reason and balanced is, surely that's not a bad way to go about life.
No, I think you're completely right. We talk about food in the nutrition space and women's health from a nutrition perspective, what can I eat to optimize health or X, Y, and Z. But also food is like a social occasion, you'll have food that reminds you of home, or comfort food that you turn to when you're upset. And oftentimes people think that we shouldn't comfort eat, or we shouldn't eat foods that we're craving if they're not quote unquote healthy. But actually, if that allows you to choose what's nutritionally optimal 80% of the time, and allows you to have food or birthday cake with your daughter or your best friend, or go out for dinner with your partner on the weekends, and you're able to do that without having any, food noise, I think that's a healthy approach to have.
And it's knowing as well how foods react to you. Like we have Monday to Friday, my kids, they'll start the day, they'll have an omelette every day before school. And they love it. We'll put cheese in there, a bit of ham, whatever. On the weekends, they'll have pancakes with some Biscoff. And Mia actually said to me, why can we not have these in the week, Mum? And I said to her, well, when you've had your pancakes and Biscoffs, I said, they're really lovely, aren't they? I said, but do you feel a bit tired after them? And she said, yeah, I do. And I said, well, that's fine. I said, it's completely fine. I said, but that's how it's reacting on your body. I said, so if you go into school having pancakes and Biscoff, I said, you're going to be so tired during your class. And she said, oh, yeah. She said, but after my eggs, I don't feel tired. I said, well, that's why we have them. So I'm not trying to give her there's good foods and bad food. I'm trying to explain to her, you can eat whatever you want, but just be aware it will make you feel a certain way. And so far that's kind of worked with us. But I think it is hard for a lot of parents who are on a time scale in the morning. I'm lucky I don't start work till the afternoons, but if you've got to get up and out and your kid's out, cereal is the quick fix. Yeah. And that's, like you say, the world we're living in. They'll put a cereal box on and then they'll put iron, tick, magnesium, tick. And the reality is it's got none of them. You know, what advice would you give to families who are on a budget and a time scale but want to try and get healthy food into their kids?
It is really difficult, and I will caveat with this that I don't have kids, so I practically don't know how difficult it is, but I do have lots of nieces and nephews. And I think a lot of the health advice that we give is coming from, you know, like a privileged place. But if you are time poor or it comes down to financial insecurity, it can be harder to integrate some of these things. And I think it's just going back to basic principles. Yes, maybe if you find you're struggling to get your kids to eat any other cereal, then it's maybe opting for less sugary cereal and trying to add in things to it. So if you can sneak in maybe some sliced fruit in there or add some grapes on the side, or instead of having it with milk, maybe have some yogurt in there so you're getting some more protein, more calcium for the kids. So it's tweaking things that you're already doing so it's not overhauling your budget, not overhauling your timetable, and they're not going to think that you're doing anything that's too different in the mornings because you don't want to change their schedule too much. So it's those little tweaks, kind of like what we do for ourselves, that will help.
So nutrition is always big news across all of women's health platforms, and there are things that get more attention than others and go viral. We've got a few here. We'd love to get your thoughts on them. So supplements, big business, and if you believe the hype, they can solve everything. What's your opinion on taking supplements?
Yeah, I think supplements have really gotten out of hand in the last couple of years. Like, I think since, you know, you started at Women's Health, since I started writing content online, the supplement industry has just grown and grown. And the thing that people need to know is supplements aren't regulated in the UK like medicines. So we don't have to prove safety and efficacy. So they're regulated like foods. So yes, they do come under quality control, but we don't know if they work very well. And so a lot of people trust these supplements will fix an unhealthy diet, or a lot of people use them as an insurance policy. I'm not really sure what they do, but hopefully it will keep coughs and colds at bay. And I know from research that that's why a lot of people do take supplements. What I think has grown over the last couple of years is obviously we've got social media, we've got a lot more influencer marketing, we've got ads on social media, so there's supplements for everything. What I will say is supplements will not change a bad diet. They won't magically make things better. Not everyone needs to take supplements, and it's very individual. So there's no supplement that I would give you that I would give you. The only caveat to that is vitamin D in the winter in the UK, because we just simply don't get enough, and we can't get enough from food. But supplements are super individual. And so, Claire, you might have different goals. So maybe it's strength goals, or maybe it's longevity goals, or maybe you've got a specific health condition, so we need to supplement for that. And Gemma, it might be that you cut out certain foods, or you can't have a certain food, and so we need to make sure that you're getting that nutrient from that. So when I'm seeing clients in clinic, we're going through it on that level of like granular level to see what are your specific needs. So for anyone listening, like the next time you see an ad pop up and it says this is going to cure bloating or this will balance your hormones, like really interrogate whether you need that. Like, what does that even mean? Like, there's so many supplements, and I know we're going to speak about women's health in a second, but I feel like even in the women's health space, so much generic supplements that promise these very vague claims. And I think even as someone like seeing that content, I feel, oh gosh, should I be taking that as well? Like, you get really dragged into it. But at the end of the day, if you have a healthy, balanced diet, if you don't have any specific health needs, it's unlikely that you need to be taking many, if any, supplements.
Okay. What about the pro and prebiotics? Because there's different ones, isn't there? Do they actually have a benefit, a pro and prebiotic?
Yeah, so probiotics are basically like live microorganisms that help our gut bacteria. And so we can find it in things like live yogurts, kefir, sauerkraut. You can take it in a supplement form. And then prebiotics are basically like what we feed our gut bugs. And that's basically like high fiber foods. Some probiotics, so the live microorganisms, can be beneficial in certain situations. The caveat is that they are strain specific. So if you have IBS, for example, I will recommend a specific strain for that specific problem. Or if you've been taking antibiotics and you want to replenish your gut bacteria, I will recommend a completely different strain.
Yeah.
So it's strain specific. Just like if you needed antibiotics from a doctor, they would recommend a specific antibiotic as opposed to just giving you a generic one. And I think that's what people maybe aren't fully aware of, because you can go into the supermarket and you just see a whole load and you think, well, I need to look after my gut. I will just take that probiotic because it looks like it will suit me.
Yeah.
And I think if you're just taking it for that reason, like an insurance policy, you're probably wasting your money, and you could probably do something cheaper by just focusing on improving your diet from a gut health perspective. And that could be maybe integrating some probiotic rich foods. So having kefir with your granola in the morning, having live yogurt and blueberries as a snack, maybe adding a bit of sauerkraut to your salad, like little things like that, integrating it that way before going to supplements. And from a prebiotic perspective, just getting as much plant-based foods into your diet, onions, garlic, artichokes, asparagus, trying to build your meals around plant-based foods, and you'll be doing a lot more than what you can get in a supplement.
The next one is UPFs, ultra-processed foods.
Yes.
They are the devil. If you read all the books and listen to all the podcasts, are they always evil?
They're really having a moment at the moment, and there's been lots of books that have come out, lots of podcasts, lots of TikToks and things of people in supermarkets reading ingredient lists. So ultra-processed foods, yes, tend to be more palatable, so they taste better. We eat lots of it, and they tend to be higher in sugar, salt, fat, all the things that generally aren't health promoting. And we do know that if you consume a lot in your diet, then it can lead to poor health outcomes. So as a whole, they're not health promoting, but it is a big category of food. And within that, we also have things like fortified breads, we have certain yogurts, we have infant formula. So there is a place for them in our diets. I think as a whole, if we can limit as much processed foods we have in our diet, that's a really positive start. But I don't want people to panic that if they have to turn to processed foods because it means that they're going to get some vegetables into their diet that day, that's not going to undo all the good that you've done. So it's about limiting in their diet and limiting it in our diet, but they're not always the devil. You know, it's very different if you were to have, I don't know, like Doritos versus having some protein yogurt, for example. So there's kind of like, yes, we can put them in the same category, but how they benefit us will be different.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's different types, I guess, isn't there? Some that are just avoid, but some that are like, oh, it's like you say, one UFP is not going to make you unhealthy, one salad's not going to make you healthy. There's a good balance.
That's it.
What about creatine? There's a lot of hype now that women should be taking creatine.
Yeah, creatine is really has grown in popularity over the last couple of years. We've got good evidence behind it. It's quite safe to take, and I think it's mostly been really popular in the sports and exercise space. But actually, there's a lot more evidence coming out in how it might benefit us from a cognition point of view and brain health. Women typically have lower stores of creatine, so maybe supplementing might be more beneficial for us. And it can be helpful for kind of building muscle mass, especially when you're coupling it with strength training. And I know a lot of women like really just get on really well with it. So I think that is a supplement that I think is well researched, and I would consider it as well.
I take creatine. I have done for years.
I've started now since we've been doing this. So I've been adding it into my shake. Final one, electrolytes. Now this is quite a personal one to me because I have been taking electrolytes, but I've also had kidney issues. Okay. I had kidney failure 2 years ago. And I've since read that some kidney doctors are saying proceed with caution. So I guess it goes back to what we were saying about supplements. I thought it couldn't do no harm, but actually is electrolytes something people should be a little bit wary of?
The short answer is yes. It shouldn't be a supplement that you take every day.
People are now.
People are taking electrolytes every day, even without having a reason to do so. So let's break it down what electrolytes are. Basically, they're like minerals which we have in our body, and usually your body does a really good job at helping to regulate those levels. If you have any issues with your kidneys, for example, then you might find that you've got higher levels than not, or if you're really unwell. Now, if you're sweating a lot, so if you're exercising, if you're doing a lot of running, for example, or if you're in your hot or humid conditions, or if you have had diarrhea and vomiting and you're losing salts that way, then you might need to replace them with electrolytes. So, for example, I'm a big runner. When I do long runs, I'll take electrolytes. Do I take electrolytes every day? No, because your body has enough salts in there. We also get electrolytes from food and drink in our everyday. Even if you're not adding salt to food, you're still getting it from your food. The issue when we take too much is that you're taking a lot of sodium into your body, and potassium and calcium sometimes, different electrolytes in different supplements. That is not good for your body on a day-to-day level if you're not requiring to replenish that. So in your case, if you've had any kidney issues, that is something I would definitely proceed with caution, or if you've got any blood pressure issues. So I guess the take-home message is most people shouldn't be taking electrolytes every morning when they wake up. I see it in a lot of what I eat in a day videos, and I think not something we should really be promoting. If you're training for a marathon, or if you're doing a big sweaty workout and you're on holidays, then yes, that's fine. But for most people, not a daily supplement.
What aspects, you mentioned women's health earlier, what specific aspects of women's health do you think are the most, underserved but in the mainstream media, the ones that we should be talking about, but they kind of get pushed under the carpet?
Can I say all aspects?
Yeah.
I think all aspects of women's health, but I do feel like we've made progress in the menopause space, and I think thanks to the likes of Davina McCall, who's been so vocal on that topic and has really pushed with documentaries. So I feel like we're making progress in certain spaces, but as someone who's just released a book on the menstrual cycle, talking about periods publicly on platforms has been so hard from a resistance point of view, because women want to hear it, but I think mainstream media still struggle with talking about anything related to the menstrual cycle. And when we sit back and think about it, 1.9 billion people on this planet have a menstrual cycle. We have it for about 40 years of our life. And that is a huge portion of our life that a lot of women are basically living kind of without knowing much knowledge about what's happening in their body in a day-to-day, because your menstrual cycle isn't just a bleeding phase. There's so much more that happens across that 23 or so days of your cycle beyond your period. And those hormones impact everything from your sleep, your energy, your mood, your skin health, even your cravings. And I think a lot of us just live in the dark about our bodies. So I feel like that's a big area. And kind of second reason why I think we need to talk more about the menstrual cycle is it brings awareness to conditions like endometriosis and PCOS that take so long to get diagnosed, because when women do go to see their doctors, they're often told, well, it's just normal. It's just part of having a period. They're supposed to be painful. They're supposed to be heavy. You're supposed to be missing school and university, but that's not normal.
No, it's not. Mine have only got more painful. They're okay now, but mine only got painful after kids. The first few after having the kids. But I was warned about that because obviously you've had a pregnancy. But the whole thing you said, there's embarrassment of women talking about it. The first poo after a baby is like
terrifying.
It's like birthing another child, but from a different area. But again, no one spoke openly about that to me. So that first period post baby and the first poo combined, I was like, it was awful. And there wasn't a lot of people talking about it. So thank God for people like yourself who are open to talking about periods and, your cycle. And it's interesting you say, that it changes, because your latest book focuses on the menstrual cycle, because there's ways women can train around the cycle, isn't there?
Yeah.
And certain foods. My trainer tells me when I'm craving chocolates during my period, just to up my magnesium intake elsewhere, because that's what my body's craving. So is there certain hacks and things we can do?
Yeah, it's so interesting when you really get into it, which is why I just think, like, all women should be given this manual when you get your first period, because it would just help with so many things. So cravings before your period are really common, especially for chocolate. And I found this really validating when I looked into the research. So in the week or two before your period, we call that the luteal phase, you actually have an increase in your resting metabolic rate. So how much energy you burn at rest. And in some studies, it's quoted to be as high as 300 extra calories per day. And naturally, we see women's cravings increase and also their food intake increases, which basically our bodies are intuitive. So we feel hungrier because we're using more energy. And in particular, cravings for chocolate are higher during that time. So magnesium is one of the reasons why we might crave chocolate, but also because we're using more energy. And if you find that you can have some chocolate and leave it there, but if you find that you're binging on chocolate, and that's something that can also happen during that time, binge eating behaviors increase, then think about what you could do proactively with your meals during that time. So a lot of what I do with my clients who struggle with this is just simply going back to basics. Are you having your 3 regular meals per day? Are they balanced? Do we have complex carbs in there? Are fats or protein? If you are finding that you're always hungry during that time, just have a strategic snack plan for 4 p.m. If you don't need it, you don't need it, but we've got it booked in there anyway. It's about making those little changes that will stop you feeling so derailed in that week before your period. Your sleep's often worse as well. Your mood's often worse as well. So if we can manage your blood sugar levels, we'll help you feel a little less crazy before your period comes.
So you've talked about your nutritional approach around your menstrual cycle, but as women, we go through so many different life stages. I'm 47, so I'm very knee deep in the perimenopause. Do our nutritional needs change and evolve with these life stages that we go to, which are dictated to by hormones, obviously?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key hormones, estrogen, progesterone, which are influencing those cravings and our even how our gut function works, they're influencing how we feel across the menstrual cycle. But when we go through the perimenopause, we don't have this lovely, nice, kind of like gentle flowing of the hormones. We have really erratic hormones that are up and down. And that's why people can feel just completely different from day to day when you're going through the perimenopause. And then when you go through the menopause, you have very much like a big decline, big drop in estrogen, and then it's very, very low and steady. So the perimenopause is almost the most erratic hormonal period that you'll go through. And because your hormones are declining in that way, that is influencing lots of things. So we talk about estrogen as like this sex hormone that influences reproduction, but it influences your bone health, your brain health, even your cardiovascular health. So estrogen impacts how your vessels dilate, which is why after the menopause, we get a big spike in things like blood pressure, increased in cardiovascular disease, because your vessels become more rigid. Our bones become more brittle because estrogen helps keep our bones strong. And there's some relationship between estrogen and our brain health as well. So we need to start thinking about those things, not just when you go through the perimenopause, but before, but especially during the perimenopause. So how can we protect our bones? We want to be strength training. And we want to make sure that we're doing some impact training. So impact is on kind of like 2 feet or 1 foot. So running or hiking or anything that requires impact going through your legs. So what wouldn't count is cycling and swimming because you're not weight bearing. And
did you do skipping? But that's because
skipping would be amazing.
An easy one,
yeah,
isn't it?
definitely.
Everyone wants to skip at home.
And going to the gym is also really great because when you are training your muscles, they're basically pulling on your bones and that helps keep them strong. So we see a lot of women drop off in their strength training once they go through the menopause, but it's arguably the most important time for you to be in the gym. Even if you don't want to go to the gym, get dumbbells at home and do one of those classes, or just do bodyweight exercises, anything where you're using some resistance. So that could be your body or bands. The other thing we want to think about is then our heart health. Obviously, exercise really plays a role there. And so getting in your cardiovascular training, your walking, your step count, breaking up sitting time, but also your nutrition. So thinking again about, a type of diet that really helps all of us, a Mediterranean style diet. So heart healthy diet, reducing how much saturated fat you have in your diet, reducing alcohol and salt, and focusing on your colourful fruits and veg, your oily fish, trying to cook as much from home, and trying to have those regular meal times. I know that when you're going through that time as well, it can feel like your routine needs to change completely, but it's just about trying to keep the basics there. We want to keep your blood sugar steady. We want to focus on your complex carbs, your fibre, your protein, and your healthy fats.
Yeah, it's like back to, like you say, back to basics. It is, when I look at the diet of my grandma had, I mean, she's passed away now, bless her. But I'm sure her diet when she was a child was so different to ours. Yeah. It was just veg, meat, potatoes, just the basic things.
Yeah.
Now we've I think it was in the 60s, wasn't it? We were all about convenience over care when it came to food. What can we get people to eat quickly, efficiently? Let's do media marketing to get them coming back. So it's all kind of been oversaturated now, but that back to basics is a real thing, I think, to remember. We kind of overcomplicate everything, not just food. It's everything with beauty, with health, with wellness. It is just stripping it back, and it becomes a lot easier, I think, for people to manage.
Yeah, and I think if I think about like my own mum, I think now that she doesn't have kids that she's cooking for anymore, like prepping school lunches, I don't think she prioritizes her nutrition in the way that she prioritized ours. And we see that with women when they go through that life stage where they aren't prioritizing themselves because they've been so used to prioritizing their children for such a long time that they're kind of in a limbo. So I think it's a really important time to now it's time to look after you if you haven't been doing it already. Prioritize your strength training. Sign up to a class if you've never done it before, and start thinking about your nutrition, because it will really help you not just with your health but also stay independent as you get older. And I think that's something that's so valuable.
I think as women, we are terrible at putting ourselves first, aren't we?
Yeah.
We put everyone, our partners, our ailing parents, our children, our employees, our employers, and we come so far down the pecking order.
Yeah.
Because especially your 40s, they call the 40s the battleground years, and I can absolutely understand why that is, because you're probably at the most senior you've been in your career, but you've either got young children or teenagers. Well, I've got a teenager at home. Your children are younger than mine, but you know the challenges that come along with that, and parents, ailing parents. Sadly, my mother passed away last year, and you think of all the pressures that are put upon us. I put on weight last year quite quickly, and I think it was because of all the stress I was under. And for me, I don't drink very often, but I'll eat biscuits, and I just went head first into the biscuit tin and put on weight because I just took my eye off the ball because I just wasn't putting myself first, and I wasn't making time for exercise. I wasn't prioritising my nutrition. And I'm someone who's very knowledgeable in that area as well. And if I can take my eye off the ball, you can see how it really easily happens for many women.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're so right in that, I hate generalizing, but women do put themselves last. And, one thing I found really interesting when I was kind of really stepping into the space on how women are different to men and how women are not small men is the differences between how men and women are diagnosed with heart attacks. And in the UK, women are more likely to die from a heart attack. And there's been a lot of research into why this might be. The British Heart Foundation have done a lot in this. And there are differences in how we present with heart attacks. Definitely the primary symptom is if you've got central crushing chest pain, do go to the hospital. But for a lot of women, it will present a little bit differently. It might feel like palpitations or indigestion, less obvious symptoms. But another core reason that came out from this research is women are more likely to try self-medicate at home, and they put off going to the doctor because they think, I don't have time. It can't be me. Also, if you look at any of the advertisements for heart attacks, it's always an older white man. It's never a woman.
It's true.
And so just kind of going back to what you said, Claire, is that please do not put off your health, because it could be something as serious as that. And I've seen it myself.
Yeah. When I had kidney failure, I only went to the hospital when my mother-in-law, when I started becoming delirious.
You were touching
And when I was admitted, the doctor said, thank God you came in when you did. My kidney function was 19. Oh my God. And there is no way I would afford an ambulance on my own. I would have stayed in bed at home thinking, I'll get over this, it's just a bug. Because you don't think to put yourself first, or that something can actually be quite serious.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, so I can totally see how women don't go and get help for a heart attack because they think, oh, it's just something, it'll go away.
Yeah, that's it. So anyone listening, if you do have any chest pain, don't just assume it's men.
No.
And also can happen in younger women. It does not, you don't have to be like an older woman to experience that. So
My
really
dad had
important.
chest pain for 3 days, and he was taking Gaviscon thinking it was indigestion.
Oh, good.
And then it was too late. So we're always like, I mean, it wasn't as much research back then. I mean, I'm 40 now, I was 17. But I'm always thinking if it had just gone to the doctors, they might have said, let's have a look. There's a little blockage, let's clear it. But he kept saying, I'll be right, more Gaviscon. But obviously you're a nutritionist, you're a PT as well, which is brilliant. What is your approach to fitness for women? Because there's a lot of, again, we're debunking myths. I get messages all the time from women wanting to weight train, but scared to death they will bulk up.
Yeah.
Now, I'm always, we've not got enough testosterone to do it naturally anyway. I mean, it's not going to happen. Do you get that from a lot of women frightened of the weight section?
Yeah, I think I don't know who has created or whether we've done it for ourselves, but there's a lot of barriers for women when it comes to exercise. And when we compare it to men, women are completely like a lot more inactive than men. So it's really important that we try find ways to get more women active. But especially when it comes to weight training, I do think it's changed over the years where there's a lot more role models within the space who have really championed weight training and shown that you're not going to turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger in the morning. You require a lot more testosterone. You have to eat a lot of food and you have to do a lot of weight training to build muscle. And beyond the aesthetics of building muscle, as we've talked about, having muscle is so important for your bone health. It's so important for your metabolic health, your glucose regulation. I always say to any of clients, your muscles are like a glucose sponge. So the more muscle mass we can build, the more insulin sensitive you will be. And that's really important for, managing our energy levels, managing our blood sugar as well. So it's really important from that perspective. Again, just being strong and independent. What we do now will lend us to how we'll be in the future after we retire X, Y, and Z. But also, I think when it comes to weight training, there's this added layer now. And I guess because I talk a lot about the menstrual cycle, it comes up a lot. And that is we should train in line with our hormones and our cycles. Now, when it comes to that research, there may be small dips in performance during your period in that early follicular phase of the cycle, so the first kind of week of your cycle. But it's a very small effect. And then when we look at training around ovulation, which is kind of that second week of your menstrual cycle, you may feel slightly stronger. Hypothetically, you might build more muscle during that time, but the effects are quite small. So I find all of this really fascinating, but I think we're not at a stage where you need to have a specific strength program or training program around your menstrual cycle. I think use your cycle to help guide you, use your symptoms to guide you. But I think we're going to put women in another box if we say you can only do Pilates on week 1 and you have to do HIIT training on week 2. That's not where we're at with the evidence.
So Hazel, you're a picture of health sat before us today. How do you practice what you preach? Because you must be a very busy woman as well. How do you prioritise wellness and fitness into your life?
Thank you, Claire. I think I've definitely gone through periods where I've completely neglected my own health. And if I think back to a time where I was just completely derailed, was working as a COVID doctor in intensive care, and there was no health practices. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating well. I was not exercising. I was not getting out in sunlight. There was nothing that was supporting me. And I completely burned out, not just because of that reason, but because of everything else that was going on. But what that taught me is that I cannot help anyone in my life. I can't help my clients. I can't do my work if I don't look after myself. So I just, a couple of years ago, really worked hard to create a schedule almost for myself where these are the non-negotiables that I need to fit into my week to feel like a healthy, functioning human. And that's going for a walk every morning, even if it's for 15 minutes, the first thing I do. Because what I used to do was get up, sit down at my laptop or get up and look at my phone. So I just try to circuit break, 15 minutes walk, sometimes it's 30 minutes, get some sunlight in my eyes, planning my meals. I don't plan every meal, but I usually prep breakfast and lunch, even though I don't work in a hospital anymore, because I know then I'll always have a healthy meal to my hand. And then I like cooking, so I cook dinner when I get home in the night. And exercise for me is a non-negotiable, and it has to be enjoyable. I've tried so many things in the past. I did CrossFit for a few years, then I fell out of love with that. Now I'm going through a running phase, and I just allow myself to find joy in movement. I think, you know, if you're doing it from a place of punishment, hatred, you know, poor body image, you're unlikely to stick to it. But if you choose something that's fun, if that's going to a class with your best friends because that's your socializing, then choose that. Or if you love doing Zumba, do that. It's whatever brings you joy. And it's those basic practices, and just try not to drink too much alcohol, trying to get into bed for 8 hours. But I'm not doing any magic supplements. I don't really do any biohacking in the sense of it. I keep it very simple because that just fits with my lifestyle.
What would you change if you could change one thing about how society approaches women's health as a whole? What would the one thing be?
I think we still view women's health as just periods and babies, and they are very important parts of women's health. But as we know, women's health it includes our entire health. Like if you're going through the menopause or the perimenopause, that's impacting every single part of your body, every organ system of your body. Your menstrual cycle doesn't just involve bleeding. It involves so many other things, and it tells us so much about your health. So I think we need to start seeing women's health as less of just these certain moments in time as we go through our lifespan, and something that impacts us every day. We need so much more research. We need so much more funding, and just more education that women should get when they go through their first period and when they're navigating things, like you said, like pregnancy, and what to expect, what happens afterwards, or the perimenopause.
Even the education needs to start sooner, because my daughter is in year 4 going into year 5 in September, but she's 9 and is already knows about periods because we talk about them, and she's reading the Lottie Brooks books. I don't know if you know the Lottie Brooks books. So the character in them is having periods and blah, blah, blah. But she hasn't been told anything in school.
Yeah.
She's relying on reading fictional books and discussing with me. Surely the conversation should start sooner with girls than before the age of 9 about, because like you, I don't know, another guest said to us, she started bleeding when she was 10. You know, girls are starting their periods younger these days, aren't they?
They are. So a lot of girls are going through puberty earlier now than they used to. And as you know, it can happen over a period of time. So one girl in the group could go through it at age 8 or 9, and then one girl could be,
so young,
12. And I think that can be really terrifying if you don't know what's happening in your body. I do find from kind of friends or my sisters with kids that a lot more women now are having conversations with their daughters because they don't want them to be in the dark. So, my sister has kids who are nowhere near that age, but she's having a lot of body conversations with them so that when it comes to that time, it's not this big taboo topic in their house. They feel comfortable to go speak to mum, or like even having tampons in the bathroom that are not hidden away. So it's just, this is a really normal thing that women go through. And I do feel like times are changing, but I agree with you in that we need to have more of a nationwide system-led approach, because it can't just be up to the mums and the dads to have these conversations.
Yeah. Mia knows about my periods already. Just because she needed the toilet, and we went to a public bathroom, so we went in the same cubicle, and I was on my period when I went to the toilet in front of her. And she just went, "Oh, what's that?" Because I just had my pad. And I just said, "Oh, it's a period, mummy, you'll have one once a month." I said, "It just happens, a couple of days, nothing to worry about." And this was ages ago. And now whenever I'm on my period, she'll say to me, "And your period again, mum?" And I say, "Yeah." And then sometimes I go to the toilet, and you can flush and whatever, but if you are on your period, you'll know sometimes there's a little bit, it sits like a 2p coin, doesn't it? And she'll come in and go, "Mum, your period's here again." And she just already doesn't know the ins and outs, but she knows that once a month it happens and it's completely fine.
Normalising it.
Yeah, I don't want her to ever think it's something disgusting or not. You know, it's gonna, because it will happen to her.
Yeah.
So I try and make light of it. Unlike my flow.
I love that.
Good.
You've achieved so much, Hazel. You know, you're a medically qualified doctor, a PT, a nutritionist. I mean, many people don't achieve even one of those qualifications. So you really quite are remarkable. But what else is there left for you to go on and achieve?
Well, I think I would say I have pivoted into women's health in the last 4 years. So The Female Factor was my third book, and then Not Just a Period was my fourth book. And I still love nutrition. I think it will always be my bread and butter. But when I realized how neglected women are in health and healthcare, I feel like this is now what my focus and vocation needs to be in. I'm really passionate about women not just being treated as small men, not just in health and healthcare, but how we approach things like nutrition and exercise, and them really getting tailored advice. So I've only stepped into the space really and scraped the surface, and there's so much to do. So I really want to unpack that more. I've started doing some research within that space as well. I'd love to do more. I'd love to write more books. I think if we can get more women who are interested in doing research in women's health, that would be amazing. But yes, I think this is what's really lighting up my fire right now. So more women's health.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Hazel. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And I'm so glad there's people like yourself out there. So it's just the knowledge that you're giving to people. Like you say, there's not enough of it, but thanks to people like yourself, there will be hopefully one day. Before you go, we do have quick fire questions, don't we?
You do. Yeah. Do you want me to go ahead and do these?
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, so we didn't give you a heads up on any of these, nothing too challenging. So Gemma and I are inviting ourselves over for dinner at all our guest houses. We've got quite a few lined up now, actually. So what are you going to cook us?
Am I doing 3 courses or?
Three courses? Well, no one else has offered us 3 courses, to be honest. So that's the first time.
I'll go 3 courses so I can be the best guest.
We'd love a 3 course.
Okay, what am I cooking you for starters? I think that I'm going to go with... I'm going through a Greek salad phase. I'm getting married in Greece in 3 months. So
lovely.
I'm going to do a Greek salad, but we'll have some dips and pita on the side.
Nice.
And then as your mains, I'm going to go with... I don't know how you guys feel about aubergine, but I love a baked aubergine.
I love aubergine.
Like with miso. And we're going to do that with salmon, some ginger and soy salmon, and some greens. I know that's really basic, but I love that. We'll put in some pea lentils as well for some carbohydrates.
Lovely.
Trust me, it's really lovely. And then as a dessert, we're going to throw out the rule book in terms of nutrition. We're going to make my granny's apple crumble and ice cream.
Oh, I love that. See, balance.
Custard.
Custard,
The best tea
I
I've
love
been offered.
custard.
Yeah.
Perfect. I went to a wedding in Ireland actually last weekend, and the dessert was
Apple
apple
crumble?
pie and
really?
custard, and
Oh,
it was
perfect.
boiling hot day. Like not the you normally associate that with
Cold
autumn,
weather.
winter around your granny's house on a Sunday afternoon. don't you?
Yeah.
What's the last thing that made you belly laugh?
Oh, let me think. What was the last thing? I was at one of my best friend's weddings on Friday in Ireland, and it was just being back with my school friends. I think we belly laughed all day. I've known those girls for almost 30 years now, 30 years in September. So
Nice.
yeah,
That's the best.
it's the best.
You're going on a desert island for 12 months and you can take one thing. What is it?
Can't be my phone.
Oh, I thought no. I'm going to say no on the phone. No.
Okay. I feel like I need to be really smart about this. A tent?
Yeah.
That's a good one. You won't get
could start with a
sunburned.
tent.
Not get bitten like I've been.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
the
I've got it
months
on my
ago.
neck.
Yeah.
Well.
I'll start with a tent.
You can choose one type of training to do forevermore. What is it?
Oh, I feel like the PT inside of me is hating that I'm saying this, but running, I just love running. I love that I can take my trainers and run anywhere in the world. So
Our listeners today, you can tell them one quick fix that they can go off and do to make themselves feel better. What would you say it is?
I I imagine you're going to get a lot of nutrition tips for this. So I would start by just saying there's not really anyone I've met who isn't sleeping enough. So I'd start by getting into bed 15 minutes earlier because it's going to make a big difference. So that would be it.
Yeah, sleep is key. And then lastly, before you go, I've got 7 things what I'll say to you, and you just have to tell me whether you hack them, whether it's a hack for you and you're all for it, or whether it's a hate.
Okay.
And you're like, absolutely not. Getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Hate.
Drinking lemon water in the morning.
Hate.
Cold showers.
Hate.
Daily meditation.
That's a hack.
Daily journaling.
Hack.
Getting 10,000 steps in a day.
Hack.
And then lastly, matcha flavoured everything.
I don't have any issues with it, but I just don't love it. So I'm
No,
gonna
it's
say
nice.
No, I don't like it.
Everyone we've asked that to have all said no. Well, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you
Amazing.
for joining us. And before you go, what's your Insta handle for anyone who wants to find you?
It's really easy. It's Dr. Hazel Wallace.
There you go.
Thank
so you can
you.
check Dr. Hazel Wallace out and get loads more information on her page. And good luck with the new book as well.
Thank you.
And have a lovely wedding.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.